Hey guys, tonight we're going to journey to a time long past, all the way back to ancient Egypt, the land of pharaohs, pyramids, and the golden sands of the desert. It's a period that has fascinated people for centuries. Just imagine walking under the shadow of the Great Pyramid or sailing down the Nile at sunrise. Sounds like a dream, right? But what if you actually had to live there, even for a day? How would you eat, work, and survive under the scorching sun and the strange customs of a time 4,000 years before modern comforts? Well, let's just say that without our air conditioning, our medicine, and our 21st century know-how, you probably wouldn't last one single day in ancient Egypt. Before we get started, take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe dim the lights in your room, or turn on a little fan for a soothing background hum. If you enjoy these late-night historical journeys, please do like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly find value in what I do here. It really helps and means a lot, and I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Feel free to drop a comment sharing that. It's always amazing to see people tuning in from all over the world at all hours, joining together in our quest through time. Now settle in, close your eyes if you want, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We're going to spend a day in ancient Egypt and experience firsthand why it would be a lot tougher than it looks in the movies. Chapter 1. Dawn on the Nile. It's early morning, and you find yourself in a small Egyptian village on the west bank of the Nile. The first light of dawn is just creeping over the horizon, painting the sky in pale pinks and golds. The air is cool now, perhaps the coolest it will be all day, and there's a faint hint of moisture from the great river nearby. You stir from your sleep, lying on a simple reed mat spread over a dirt floor. There's no plush mattress, no fluffy pillow beneath your head. In fact, your pillow is a curved block of wood, an Egyptian headrest designed to keep your head slightly elevated. It's nothing like the soft pillows you're used to, and your neck feels stiff. You've slept in your modest home, a mud brick house that you share with an Egyptian family. Perhaps they took you in as a guest or a newcomer. The walls around you are made of sun-dried mud bricks, rough to the touch but sturdy enough to have stood through seasons of heat and the rare desert rain. As the sun rises, light filters through a small high window, just an opening in the wall, really, with maybe a piece of linen hanging over it. There's no glass, and a few flies that were resting on the cloth start buzzing about as the sky brightens. You can hear the sounds of roosters crowing and the braying of a donkey in the distance. The village is waking up. People rise with the sun here, because when it sets, life largely comes to a halt. There are no electric lights to extend the day, just oil lamps that flicker weakly and require precious oil. So morning is essential for getting a jump on the day's tasks. You sit up, feeling a little disoriented. The first thing that hits you is how different the air smells. It's dry, carrying the scent of dust and earth. There's also a whiff of smoke from a cooking fire. Someone nearby is already blowing on last night's embers to bake the first bread of the day. You might catch the faint aroma of baking flatbread mixed with the less pleasant smells of the village. Animal manure, sweat, perhaps a touch of the Nile's muddy banks. It's not exactly the fresh morning breeze you might expect back home. A thin layer of sweat clings to your skin even after the cool night. This is Egypt, and even the nights can be warm depending on the season. Without fans or air conditioning, you've slept perhaps with just a linen sheet, if you were lucky to have one, or maybe nothing covering you at all, trying to stay cool. Perhaps you even moved up to the flat roof in the night because many Egyptians sleep on their roofs when it's too hot indoors. You recall climbing a simple wooden ladder to the rooftop before dawn, seeking a bit of breeze. The stars above were brilliant, far more numerous and bright than you'd ever see in a modern city with light pollution. For a moment, you might have felt awe gazing at Orion and Sirius, constellations the Egyptians also watched, linking them to their gods. But that moment of wonder was tempered by the uncomfortable reality. You've been lying on a mat outside, and you're covered in bug bites. Mosquitoes breed in the Nile's waters, and without any insect repellent or window screens, they've had a feast on your exposed arms and ankles during the night. You rub the itchy bumps, feeling a mix of annoyance and fatigue. It's not the most restful sleep you've ever had. Still, dawn in ancient Egypt has a certain magic. As you stand up and stretch, you can see the mist rising off the Nile in the distance, like a ghostly ribbon. Date palm trees catch the early light along the riverbanks. In the fields between the village and the water, a few farmers, your neighbors, are already out with their oxen, starting the day's work before the real heat arrives. You take a deep breath, trying to shake off the drowsiness. Today, you'll be joining them, trying to live as they do. And very quickly, you're going to notice how many little conveniences of modern life simply don't exist here. Before anything else, you feel the urge to relieve yourself. Nature's call. Usually you'd shuffle to a bathroom with a flushing toilet. Here, there's no such thing. Perhaps the family you're staying with has a designated corner in the small courtyard outside for this purpose, or a simple clay pot in a private nook that they empty later. Public sanitation, as you know it, is absent. You either go in a field behind the house or use a rudimentary latrine, basically a hole in the ground. It's a humbling experience squatting in the open, trying to balance without the familiar comfort of a toilet seat. You're also mindful of being quick. There might be insects buzzing around, and in the dim light, you worry about scorpions or snakes that sometimes hide under rocks. Ancient Egypt certainly has its share of creepy crawlies, and you really don't want a scorpion's sting to start your day. Once that awkward necessity is done, you return to the house. By now, the family is up too. The farmer, let's call him Mena, and his wife, along with their 2 young children. The kids, a boy of about 6 and a girl perhaps 4 years old, are still rubbing sleep from their eyes. You notice they are naked or nearly so. In ancient Egyptian villages, it's common for young children to go without clothes in the heat. It's a bit startling to your modern sensibilities, but here it's perfectly normal. Clothing is simple and minimal, especially in this climate. The wife, whom we'll name Layla, is already reaching for a jug of water to begin the day's chores. And this brings you to your next realization. There's no running water, no faucet to turn on, no sink. The water in the jug was likely fetched from the Nile or a nearby well the evening before. It's been sitting out all night and is lukewarm, with maybe a bit of silt settled at the bottom. It's used for washing up and cooking. You're a guest, so they kindly offer you some to wash. Chapter 2. No modern comforts. Morning routines. You take a small clay bowl and pour some of the water from the jug over your hands and face. It's a meager amount compared to your usual morning shower. In fact, showers and baths as we think of them are not daily routines here. Egyptians do bathe when they can, often in the river, and they value cleanliness. But soap is a luxury. If they have anything like it, it might be a paste of ash or clay to scrub off dirt, or natron, a kind of natural salt, used as a cleansing agent. This morning, you have just plain water. It rinses a bit of the sweat off your face, but you still feel quite grimy. The fine dust of Egypt seems to cling to your skin relentlessly. You look around for a towel and end up using a piece of linen cloth handed to you. It's coarse and a little rough, but it does the job. As you dry your face, you notice that Mena, the farmer, is busy with his own routine. He has taken out a razor. Not a nice safety razor, or electric one, of course, but a small blade made of bronze. It's a primitive-looking tool by your standards, but it's sharp enough. With no mirror, he's carefully shaving his face by touch and habit. In ancient Egypt, both men and women often shaved most of their body hair. The climate and the prevalence of lice made smooth skin and bald heads very common. Mena, like many Egyptian men, keeps his head shaved clean. Yesterday, you might have even seen him removing the last stubble with that razor, a task he repeats frequently. It's a bit jarring at first to see so many adults, men, women, even children, with no hair or very short hair on their heads. You recall that high-ranking Egyptians often wore wigs. Perhaps Mena has a simple cloth headdress for special occasions, but for daily work, a bare head is cooler and more hygienic. You run a hand through your own hair, assuming you still have your hair from modern times, and you can't help feeling self-conscious. After just one night here, you're already scratching. Could it be lice? Possibly. With everyone around you clean-shaven, guess whose scalp the lice would love to invade? That's right, yours. You make a mental note. If you stayed here longer, you'd likely have to shave your head too, or risk itching like crazy and carrying tiny pests. Next, you think about brushing your teeth. Morning breath is definitely present. The taste of yesterday's coarse bread and garlicey lentils lingers, but there's no toothbrush waiting by a sink. Ancient Egyptians actually did have a form of dental hygiene. They chewed on sticks frayed at one end to make a sort of rudimentary brush, and they had tooth powder made from things like crushed eggshells, pumice, and myrrh. Perhaps Mena has some twig he uses, but as a newcomer, you don't have your own. So you do your best by rinsing your mouth with a sip of water. The water has a strange taste, slightly brackish and earthy. It's not chlorinated, obviously, and you hope it's not teeming with bacteria. Unbeknownst to you, it probably is. The Nile's water in this era can carry diseases like bilharzia, a parasitic worm disease, and other pathogens. Drinking straight from it is risky, but we'll get to health issues later. Mena notices your hesitation and kindly offers you something aromatic, a little pile of crushed mint leaves, perhaps, to chew on for freshness. Egyptians know the value of herbs. Mint or cinnamon can help somewhat with bad breath. You accept gratefully. The mint is strong and spicy, not the sweet spearmint flavor of modern toothpaste, but it's refreshing in its own way. As you freshen up, Layla is already at the hearth in the courtyard, blowing air onto a small fire of dried reeds and dung. Yes, dried animal dung is a common fuel here, given wood is scarce apart from imported lumber or the limited local acacia trees. The smoke from the rekindled fire curls up, and you can't help coughing a little as you inhale it. The air in the courtyard is quickly filled with the pungent scent of burning dung, acrid and earthy. It stings your eyes slightly. You realize that indoor smoke is just a part of life here. Every meal means smoke. Over years, that smoke often leaves people with respiratory issues. You can already feel why. For now, you step back, letting Layla handle it, since she's experienced and doesn't flinch at the smoke. With the fire going, it's time to get dressed for the day. Simplicity is the rule. Your hosts hand you the clothing they arranged for you. A straightforward linen kilt, basically a wraparound skirt for your lower body. Egyptian linen is lightweight and usually off-white. It's a lifesaver in the heat because it's breathable. But don't expect any underwear or fancy gear. You wrap the linen around your waist, tying it securely. At first, it feels a little odd. Your legs are mostly bare below the knee. And if you're used to pants, you might feel exposed. But here, everyone dresses this way. Men, at least. If you were a woman, you'd be given a longer linen dress, perhaps a simple tunic that might hang from shoulder straps and go down to your calves. It might or might not cover the chest, depending on the fashion of the time and your social status. Modesty, as you know it, is different here. Bare chests aren't a big deal, especially for children and even women of lower classes, often work with minimal clothing due to the heat. On your feet, you have the option of sandals. But guess what? The family only has a couple of pairs of simple sandals made from braided papyrus for the whole household, and they're precious. Many lower-class Egyptians went barefoot most of the time. Shoes are not a daily commodity. If you still have your modern shoes, they've likely fallen apart by now or make you stand out too much. So, you slip your feet into a spare pair of sandals that Mena hands you. They're a bit too large and quite stiff. You can feel every pebble through the thin sole. If you decide to go barefoot like your hosts often do, you have to worry about thorns, sharp rocks, or hot sand later in the day. It's a tough call. For now, you keep the sandals on. Mena himself ties his kilt and adjusts a reed belt. You notice he picks up a little jar and dabs something on his skin, around his neck and underarms. He's applying a bit of scented oil or fat, the closest thing to deodorant in this world. In a climate where everyone sweats and there's no showering every day, people use perfumed oils both to soften their sun-dried skin and to mask body odor. If you get close, you'd smell a combination of rancid fat and floral perfume on many Egyptians. It's not entirely unpleasant, sort of like strong incense mixed with human scent, but it's definitely different from the soap and shampoo cleanliness you're used to. You might want some of that oil yourself, though, because you're already beginning to sweat, and the day hasn't even properly begun. Now consider one more morning routine task. Think about what you do when you wake up at home. Perhaps check your phone, look at the news, or glance at a clock. Here, none of that exists. Time is told by the position of the sun and sundials, or water clocks for more learned folks. But in a small village, you just follow nature's clock. You can't distract yourself with a quick news feed or music. If you want music, you'd have to hum a tune or wait for someone to play a flute or drum later. The silence, save for animals and people working, is profound. It's just you and the soft sounds of the village stirring. In these quiet moments, you might actually feel a sense of peace, the kind that's hard to find in our modern, information-saturated mornings. But along with that peace comes a slight unease. You realize how cut off you are from everything you know. No calendar reminders, no weather forecast. Aside from, it will be hot and sunny, as usual. You're truly on your own in a very different world. Finally, it's time for breakfast, and your stomach has already been growling a bit. All that physical discomfort and unusual sensation works up an appetite. Chapter 3. Breakfast, like an Egyptian. Gathering in the small courtyard, you and the family prepare to eat a simple morning meal. You're probably hungrier than they are. After all, your body is working hard to adjust to this environment. Layla brings over a rough clay platter with the morning's fare. Don't expect bacon and eggs or a bowl of cereal. Breakfast in this ancient land is modest. The centerpiece is bread, as it is for every meal. She hands you a small loaf of Egyptian flatbread, likely baked just this morning on that fire. It's a round, rustic loaf made from emmer wheat flour, mixed with water and maybe a bit of sourdough starter from yesterday's batch to help it rise slightly. You take the bread and notice it feels a bit gritty between your teeth even as you tear a piece off. You chew and crunch. Oh dear. There's a distinct sandiness to it. This isn't because she dropped it in the dirt. It's actually how all bread is here. The flour was ground on a stone quern by hand, probably by Layla at dawn. As she ground the grain, tiny bits of stone from the grinding surface mixed in. It's unavoidable. Over years, this gritty bread wears down the teeth of everyone in Egypt, from peasant to pharaoh. With just one bite, you're not going to ruin your teeth, but it certainly is unpleasant. It's like chewing very fine sandpaper along with your bread. You do your best to ignore the texture and focus on the taste. It's not bad, a bit sour, a bit nutty. There's no salt in it. Salt is somewhat precious and used more for preserving food or special seasoning. The bread is dense and filling, though. Along with the bread, there are onions and garlic. Yes, raw, strong onions for breakfast. In ancient Egypt, onions are a staple, cheap and flavorful. You watch Mena peel a small brown onion and crunch into it like it's an apple. The kids have a few cloves of garlic they chew on. They offer you a bulb of garlic. You hesitate. Raw garlic first thing in the morning? But you don't want to offend them, and truth be told, in a world full of germs and parasites, garlic might actually help a little with its antimicrobial properties. Though they don't know that scientifically, they just like the taste and think it gives strength. So you pop a clove in your mouth and chew. The intense sulfurous burn brings tears to your eyes, but you manage to swallow it. Instantly, your sinuses feel clearer and you're definitely awake now. You wash it down with a gulp of, oh, here's something interesting. Beer. That's right. Beer is the standard drink for all ages here, morning, noon, and night. But don't imagine a cold, bubbly pint. Egyptian beer, called henket, is more like a thick, soupy ale. Layla pours it from a clay jug into a cup for you. It's opaque, with bits of barley floating in it. It's sour-sweet and low in alcohol, maybe around 2 to 3%, just enough to be safer than water usually. People drink it because plain water can be dangerous due to contamination, and also because beer provides calories and nutrients. You take a sip. It's lukewarm, no refrigeration of course, and has the consistency of thin oatmeal. A couple of barley husks slip between your teeth. The taste is a mix of fermented grain and maybe a hint of date or honey they added for flavor. It's not the most appealing brew you've ever had, but it's surprisingly filling. After half a cup, you can feel a slight pleasant buzz. Not so much from alcohol. It's weak, but from the sheer novelty of it. Layla also brought out dates and figs, if the family is lucky enough to have a palm or fig tree nearby, or got some from the market. A few dried dates accompany the meal, offering a burst of sugary sweetness that contrasts with the heavy bread and pungent garlic. You bite into a date and find relief in its soft, chewy sweetness. At least that's one thing that tastes like a treat. The children munch their dates happily. It might be their favorite part of breakfast. As you eat, you notice everyone is using their hands. That's normal. Forks don't exist, and even spoons are rare except for serving porridge or stew. So you break off bread, use it to scoop up bits of onion and garlic, and wash it down with beer. It's a far cry from your usual morning coffee or tea. Speaking of which, coffee and tea do not exist here at all. Coffee won't be discovered for thousands of years, originating in Ethiopia long after the pharaohs. And tea is an Asian invention millennia away from reaching Egypt. so there's no caffeine to kickstart your day. You might start feeling the lack of that if you're a coffee drinker, perhaps a slight headache or sluggishness. Instead, the Egyptians sometimes drink a kind of herbal tea like infusions of peppermint or chamomile if available. They did use herbs medicinally, but today, it's just beer. One more absence you feel keenly: sugar. Apart from fruit and maybe a drizzle of date syrup or honey on rare occasions, nothing is sweet. There's no sugar cane. It's not cultivated yet in this era, and certainly no processed sugar. So any craving for a sugary pastry or chocolate croissant is going unfulfilled. You consider yourself lucky to have those dates. The family eats quickly and quietly, occasionally exchanging a few words in Egyptian. The language, if you could hear it, sounds nothing like modern Arabic or anything you know. It's a tongue full of consonants and a different rhythm. For the sake of our journey, let's assume a bit of magic. You somehow understand enough to get by, or maybe Mena knows a few words of a trade language, and you can communicate in simple terms. Otherwise, you'd be totally lost. No one speaks English. That won't exist for another 3,500 years. For our purposes, you get the gist of what they say through gestures and context. Breakfast doesn't last long. There's no leisurely morning chat over a second cup of coffee. The sun is rising fast, and that means it's time to get to work. Already, you can feel the day heating up. The cool dawn breeze is giving way to a still, warm air that promises a scorching afternoon. Mena stands up, dusting crumbs off his kilt. He grabs a simple hoe and a coil of rope. His 2 field workers, who are basically laborers from the village working with him, have arrived at the gate to join him. They likely work for a small wage or a share of the crop. They nod at you curiously. You're a stranger after all. But Mena vouches for you with a few words. They give you a once-over and a friendly enough grin, as if to say, "Hope you're ready." You swallow the last of your bread and realize your mouth is quite dry despite the beer. The desert climate wicks away moisture quickly. You'd kill for a glass of filtered water with ice right now, but that's pure fantasy. Instead, you take one more swig of the beer to hydrate a bit. The grit of the bread still crunches between your molars as you do. It's time to step out under the open sky and face an Egyptian day head-on. And you're about to learn why the phrase, "mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun," would apply double in the land of the pharaohs. With no hat, no sunglasses, those don't exist either, and only a thin layer of linen between you and the elements, you brace yourself for the work ahead. Chapter 4. Sunrise Labors. The moment you step beyond the mud brick walls of the house, the sun greets you with a blinding radiance. It has just fully risen above the horizon, and already you find yourself squinting. There are no sunglasses. You end up raising a hand to shield your eyes, but you have to get used to the glare. Ancient Egyptians had a trick for this. They lined their eyes with dark kohl makeup, which actually helped reduce the sun's glare and also kept flies from their eyes. You see that Mena's wife, Layla, had a faint trace of kohl around her eyes, and even the farmers sometimes wear a bit. It's not vanity, it's practical. But you, not expecting to do your eyeliner this morning, are stuck without that protection. The result? Your eyes already feel like they're straining, and it's only been minutes since sunrise. You follow Mena and his 2 helpers along a dirt path towards the fields. The village behind you is a cluster of mud brick buildings, all in shades of dusty brown, with some white lime wash here and there. Chickens scratch in the dirt, and a couple of skinny dogs trot by, noses down, scavenging for scraps. The children of the village, freed from morning chores, are already playing by chasing a hoop or throwing pebbles. They laugh and shout, and their voices fade as you move further into the fields. The Nile is off to your left, maybe a few hundred yards away, glittering under the sun. Between the river and the village lie the fields, flat expanses of dark, fertile soil. This rich soil is the gift of the Nile's inundation, the annual flood, without which Egypt wouldn't exist as a civilization. Right now, let's assume it's the growing season, not the flooding season. The fields are green with crops. You see the feathery tops of wheat or barley in one area, the broad leaves of maybe lettuce or onions in another, and some plots where flax is growing for linen. It's actually a pretty sight, and for a moment you think, this isn't so bad. But then your feet hit the uneven ground of the field. Immediately, you feel the difference. The soil is cracked in places and muddy in others from irrigation. Your borrowed sandals sink slightly into the muck as you walk along an irrigation canal. Mosquitoes or gnats buzz around that standing water, and you swat at them. The rising sun begins to beat on your back, and the humidity near the river makes the air heavy. Mena assigns you a simple task to start: drawing water from the canal to irrigate a row of vegetables. Seems straightforward. There's a shaduf nearby, a simple hand-operated device with a bucket on a lever arm used to lift water. You volunteer to try using it, wanting to pull your weight. You hoist the weighted lever down, dunk the bucket, then pull it up and swing it over to the field to dump. It's manual, repetitive labor, and within a few lifts, your arms start to ache. Mena chuckles and takes over, showing you the rhythm to do it efficiently. He's done this since childhood. His muscles are lean but strong, and he makes it look easier than it is. You continue helping, taking turns. Soon, the first sheen of sweat forms on your forehead. The sun is climbing, and you're performing physical labor without any of the machinery or gadgets you might use back home. No pumps, no hoses, just muscle power. After irrigation, you join the others in weeding a patch of grain. You bend down, pulling weeds by hand. The motion is simple, but after 15 minutes of constant bending and tugging, your lower back starts complaining. You realize these folks do this for hours on end. The other laborers sing a short work song, something about Hapi, the Nile god, blessing the harvest, to keep spirits up. The tune is foreign, but the idea of singing to pass time is universal. You try to hum along, or at least smile. As the morning passes, the tasks vary. You might help chase away birds that come to steal seeds, perhaps waving your arms or a rattle. You help carry bundles of cut reeds or fodder for animals. At one point, Mena asks you to assist him in hoisting a yoke onto his 2 oxen. He's going to plow a new field. The wooden plow is basically a sturdy branch shaped to scratch the soil. Nothing like the steel plows or tractors of modern farms. Attaching the oxen is awkward, and one of them swings its head, nearly smacking you with a long horn. You jump back, your heart pounding a bit from the close call. These animals are not pets. They're huge, a bit ill-tempered, and you have no experience handling livestock. Mena pats the oxen, murmuring calming words. At least that's how it sounds. And they settle. You feel a bit useless, but you try to emulate what he did, speaking softly to the beast as you help guide it. Who knows? Maybe the ox understands tone if not words. Now, the plowing begins. Mena holds the plow handles and whistles, and the oxen trudge forward, carving lines in the earth. He invited you to try for a bit. You grip the plow, and almost immediately lose your balance as it catches on a root. The plow leaps out of the furrow. You stumble, and the oxen sense the lack of control and stop. One laborer quickly steps in to steady the plow and chuckles something that's probably the Egyptian equivalent of "first time, eh?" It's clear you're not cut out for this yet, You step aside and let the expert work, feeling a mixture of respect and frustration. These tasks that the farmers do are far from easy, but they execute them with practiced efficiency. In our time, we often romanticize physical labor or imagine ancient people as primitive. But in truth, they possessed skills and endurance that most of us desk job folk can't muster. You're learning that firsthand. By now, the sun is fully above the horizon and starting to bake the ground. The temperature is rising steadily. The morning, which was cool and pleasant at dawn, is turning hot. There's no shade out here except for the occasional silhouette of a palm. You find yourself gravitating to any strip of shadow, but soon even that is gone as the sun climbs toward noon. Sweat trickles down your back and forehead. In the arid air, it evaporates quickly, leaving salt streaks on your skin. You're thirsty again, having only had that beer earlier. One of the workers passes you a pottery jar with water or very diluted beer. You take a sip. It's warm and a bit stale tasting, but wet enough to soothe your throat. You must be careful not to drink too much without thinking. Remember, this water might not be pure. But right now, you don't care. You're parched. Looking around as you catch your breath, you see that you're not the only one toiling. All around the fields, other villagers are working too. You see women in some nearby plots, perhaps gleaning leftover grains or tending vegetable gardens. They wear simple dresses, sweat glistening on their brows, some with kerchiefs over their shaved heads to block the sun. Children too have jobs, maybe keeping goats or ducks in line, or running back to the village to get something for their parents. In the distance towards the river, a different scene catches your eye. A group of men, maybe a dozen or so, are hauling something on a sled, a heavy load of rocks or logs. They are shouting chants in unison, coordinating their pulls on ropes. You realize they might be part of a corvée labor team, people drafted to work on a state project, perhaps fixing a levee or building a small temple. Egypt frequently required peasants to do such communal work, especially during the flood season when fields were submerged. Could it be that later today you'll have to join such labor? It's possible if Mena's obligations call for it. The sight is both impressive and intimidating. It strikes you that being a laborer under overseers might be even harsher than farm work. Those guys possibly have a taskmaster with a stick, ensuring they pull their weight. The sun climbs higher, your body grows more fatigued by the minute, and you're wondering how on earth anyone can keep this up all day. Yet, no one else seems ready to stop. Life in ancient Egypt, especially for farmers, is a dawn-to-dusk affair. The concept of an 8-hour workday or weekends off doesn't exist. There are some rest days tied to religious festivals, yes, and there's a kind of rhythm. They had a 10-day week in some eras, with possibly 1 day rest depending on the period and the work. But on a day like today, unless it's a festival, which it isn't as far as you can tell, they will work until the sun is about to set. Your modern body and mind, however, are not used to this constant manual effort. After a couple hours, every muscle is complaining. Your lower back feels like it did after that one time you helped a friend move furniture all day. But even more so. Your thighs are sore from squatting and lifting. Your hands have developed a blister or two from handling rough tools without gloves. And the sun has begun to scorch the back of your neck and shoulders. You can already foresee an angry red sunburn developing on your pale skin, assuming you aren't already tanned. Ancient Egyptians typically have bronzed, sun-toughened skin from a lifetime of exposure. Not to mention many have an innate, darker complexion that handles the sun better than a sun-deprived modern indoor person. You might peel or even get sunstroke if you're not careful. And careful is hard to be when you're this exhausted. Fatigue leads to clumsiness. At one point, you trip over an irrigation ditch, landing on your knees in the mud. It hurts, but mostly, it hurts your pride. The others give concerned looks. Mena helps you up and speaks some gentle words. Perhaps he's saying, "Take it easy," or "It takes time to learn." You feel a sense of gratitude. He could have been harsh. After all, a slacker in the team could threaten the day's work. But Egyptians value harmony and cooperative spirit. The concept of Mahat, or cosmic order, extends to keeping peace and helping each other in daily life. They likely see you as well-meaning but inept, not as lazy. Still, you can't help but think, if this were a stricter overseer on a royal project, you might have gotten a lash of a whip for stumbling and slowing things down. Speaking of whips, as midday approaches, you suddenly hear shouting from the direction of that group by the river. Curiosity, or an excuse to pause, gets the better of you. You shade your eyes and look carefully. It seems one of the laborers there has collapsed from the strain or heat. A figure who looks like an overseer is yelling and gesturing. Then comes a crack of a whip in the air. It's too far to hear clearly, but the body language is unmistakable. They are whipping the poor man's back to get him up. He staggers, forced back to his feet, and the team resumes their hauling. You swallow hard. That's a stark reminder of the harsh discipline that can be found in ancient work crews. As a village farmer working his own leased land, Mena is freer and kinder to his helpers. But if you were a laborer on a state project, you wouldn't have such considerate treatment. Slackers, or those who faint, often faced the lash. There are no labor laws or worker protections here. Physical punishment is a normal management technique. This sight sends a chill down your spine despite the heat. You realize that if you were not with this relatively compassionate family, but instead thrust into a gang building a pyramid or digging a canal, you might indeed not last a day, not just from exhaustion, but from the brutal enforcement of productivity that you're not prepared for. It's a sobering thought. However, out in Mena's fields, things are looking up slightly. You've made it to what appears to be a short mid-morning break. The worst heat of noon is near, and Egyptians often try to take at least a brief rest at midday. Mena signals everyone to pause and heads over to a shade cast by a clump of date palms near the field's edge. You gratefully follow, feeling the temperature drop a tiny bit in the shade. Layla, bless her, has sent one of the older children with a basket of food for the midday meal. The boy arrives, balancing the basket on his head. Inside, wrapped in more linen cloth, are more flatbreads and perhaps a small bit of leftover dried fish or goat cheese. There's also another jug of beer. It's time for lunch, and some desperately needed respite. Chapter 5. Blistering heat and a midday respite. By late morning, the sun has become a relentless force directly overhead. You and your companions retreat gratefully to the shade of a cluster of palm trees at the edge of the fields. The slight relief it offers feels almost heavenly on your overheated skin. You can feel your heart pounding from the exertion of the morning's work. As you sink down to sit on the ground, you're breathing hard, chest rising and falling as you try to cool down. There is no concept of break room or lunch hour here, just a necessary pause so that people and animals don't collapse under the peak of the midday sun. Layla's young son has delivered a simple midday meal in a woven basket. Mena opens the cloth covering, and the familiar sight of flatbread greets you, along with a small piece of dried fish and a bit of goat cheese wrapped in a leaf There's also a fresh jug of beer. Despite your exhaustion, or perhaps because of it, your appetite has grown ferocious. Swinging that hoe, pulling those weeds, and simply enduring the heat have burned through your meager breakfast. Everyone gathers around, sitting on rocks or directly on the cool ground. You tear into the bread. It's a bit drier now since it was baked in the morning, but still the same coarse texture. You use it to scoop up a bite of the dried fish. The fish is heavily salted, one way to preserve it in this climate, and extremely chewy. It's like jerky, but fishy and a tad rancid, because without refrigeration, everything has a tang of age. You're so hungry, you don't mind the strong flavor too much. The goat cheese is crumbly and sour, likely made from milk left to curdle and ferment. It's not like the creamy cheeses you might know. It has a pungent aroma, but it provides some much-needed fat and protein. As you eat, one of the field workers, a wiry middle-aged man named Hori, removes his headcloth and wipes the sweat from his bald pot. He catches your eye and gives a sympathetic smile. In his other hand, he's holding his share of the meal. You notice he's missing a few teeth. When he grins, there are gaps, and one tooth looks blackened. He probably suffers from frequent toothaches. Nearly everyone here does by a certain age. Between the gritty bread and lack of modern dental care, teeth wear down fast. Hori's probably in his 30s, but looks older. Deep creases from sun exposure, a wiry sun-darkened body. You wonder if he's had any relief for those bad teeth. Perhaps a village healer gave him a clove of garlic or a dab of honey and herbs to numb the pain temporarily. There are no dentists to fix cavities or pull teeth safely. Many Egyptians simply endure the pain until the tooth rots out or an abscess becomes life-threatening. You can't imagine enduring that without painkillers. In fact, you recall that Egyptians sometimes prayed to Sekhmet or Hathor for healing, or recited spells to ward off the tooth worm they believed caused tooth decay, along with applying concoctions of ground herbs. But on a day-to-day basis, most just grit their teeth, or what's left of them, and live with it. Everyone eats rather quickly. There's not a lot of food to linger over, and what there is plain. You realize another aspect of this life: monotony of diet. Bread, onions, garlic, maybe fish, maybe lentils, day in, day out. If you're lucky, some fruit or a bit of cheese. Meat is a rarity reserved for special occasions or for the wealthy. Today's dried fish is a modest luxury because Mena lives near the Nile and can occasionally catch extra to salt and save. But think about vitamins. They have no concept of those. You, coming from a world of varied diet, might soon develop cravings. Maybe you're already fantasizing about a cold slice of watermelon or a glass of orange juice. Interestingly, Egypt does have melons and figs, but those are seasonal and not available daily. Citrus won't be introduced for a long time. Many common nutrients are in short supply. For example, iron. Few foods here are rich in it, especially when meat is scarce. Over a longer stay, a modern person might develop anemia or other deficiencies eating like this. The ancient Egyptians, too, often had health issues from their limited diet. Evidence from mummies shows signs of malnutrition and vitamin deficiencies, despite the relative abundance of calories in bread and beer. In one day, you won't feel that. But if you tried to live here longer, the lack of variety would surely take a toll on your body. As you sit in the shade munching quietly, a stillness falls. The whole landscape around you is hushed under the blazing sun. Even the animals seem to pause. The oxen stand flicking their tails under a tree, and the birds have gone quiet, hiding from the midday heat. You find yourself sweating less now, not because it's cooler, but because the dry air has wicked away so much moisture you're on the edge of dehydration. Your head feels a bit light, maybe a slight throb of a headache from the intense sunlight and physical strain. You eagerly take the cup of beer that's passed to you and gulp some down. It's safer than water, and also, frankly, there's nothing else. A nice cool lemonade? Not in this world. The beer's tepid and sour, but it's wet. Mena notices you rubbing your temples and squinting. He frowns with concern and speaks to Layla's son, who runs off back toward the village. A few minutes later, the boy returns with a handful of some kind of plant leaves, likely peppermint or maybe chamomile. Mena gestures for you to chew on the peppermint leaves. It's a folk remedy for headaches, or at least a way to refresh oneself. You do so, and the minty oils spread in your mouth, giving a cooling sensation. It helps a little, or maybe it's just the thought that it should help. Placebo or not, you're grateful. While resting, you overhear bits of soft conversation in the group. They're talking about the work done and what's next. Hori mentions something about the temple dues. Apparently, after lunch, part of the plan is indeed to deliver some of the harvested grain to the local temple storehouse as tax or rent for the land, which is often temple-owned. That reminds you, your day's not over with just field work. There's an errand to run which you'll be part of, and it might be your first close encounter with officialdom and religion here. As they chat, another laborer passes. A younger man complains quietly about a pain in his belly. The others show sympathy. You gather he's been having some kind of recurring stomach issue. You wonder what it could be. Maybe parasites, which are rampant, or maybe an ulcer, or just chronic hunger pangs if he's not getting enough food. Layla's son offers Passes a small pouch, presumably containing a home remedy. It might be crushed garlic with honey, an all-purpose tonic in this world, or perhaps a bit of cumin and coriander to chew, since those can help digestion. Passes accepts it and mutters a thanks. The conversation then turns to a recent event in the village. An elderly neighbor had died the week before. They speak of it with a mix of sadness and acceptance. In ancient Egypt, death is ever present, but also seen as a transition to the afterlife. The neighbor was an old woman who likely succumbed to what they described as a fever that lasted several days. From your modern perspective, it could have been anything, maybe influenza or pneumonia, or even something like a bacterial infection that went untreated. Here, of course, there were no antibiotics. The local healer probably tried giving her herbal infusions, maybe willow bark, which contains a form of salicylic acid, a natural pain reliever, or a poultice to bring down fever, plus a lot of prayers to Sekhmet or Isis for healing. When those failed, the family made her final days comfortable with cool cloths and incense to mask the smell of illness, hoping for divine intervention. Sadly, she passed, and they would have prepared her body for burial, not mummification. That's expensive and mostly for those who can afford it. But a simple wrapping and shallow grave in the desert, where the hot sand might naturally dry the body. Hearing this, you can't help but feel a pang of anxiety. If you were to fall seriously ill here, a bad infection, appendicitis, a broken bone that gets infected, anything at all, your chances of survival would plummet. The Egyptians have a fairly advanced medical knowledge for their time. They do basic surgeries, set broken bones in splints, use an array of herbal remedies, and even recognize some diseases. But it's nowhere near what you're accustomed to. A deep cut could mean tetanus without a vaccine. Drinking tainted water could give you dysentery or cholera, unknown to them by name, but deadly nonetheless. Malaria from a mosquito bite, tuberculosis, leprosy, smallpox, all those diseases exist here and there's no cure, only hope and prayers. It dawns on you that living past childhood is an achievement here. Many children die young from fevers or gastrointestinal illnesses. If you're fortunate to reach adulthood, you might only live to your 30s or 40s before something claims you. The average lifespan is short, skewed by high infant mortality. But even those who survive childhood often age quickly due to the hard life and constant health threats. In your single day, you likely won't catch some deadly disease, though sunstroke is a risk if you aren't careful. But you are certainly exposed to things your body isn't used to. As you swat a mosquito on your arm, you have a fleeting worry. Could that one carry malaria? Possibly. There's no quinine here. Or what about the water that splashed on your legs earlier when you helped irrigate? If that canal water had microscopic worms, schistosome parasites, they could be burrowing into your skin, beginning a cycle that might make you very sick weeks or months from now with organ damage. The farmers here know not to wade barefoot for too long in the slow canals, though they don't know about parasites in a scientific sense. They just know some waters cause bloody urine or sickness. In fact, some men wear linen sheaths over their privates when working long in the Nile to ward off those unseen evils. You, of course, did not have such precaution. Not that one day will certainly infect you, but the risk is real, and it's unsettling to contemplate. Despite these dark possibilities, the tone among the group stays fairly upbeat. This is just life for them. They've never known any other world. They joke lightly about who was slower at plowing today, or about the stubbornness of the oxen. They tease Passes that his bellyache might be cured if he drinks fewer jugs of beer at the tavern corner. Paces fires back that he'd stop drinking beer when they start making wine cheap. Wine is a luxury drink for the well-off, so it's a little sarcastic humor. You chuckle along softly, even if you only grasp the meaning from context and tone. After perhaps half an hour of resting and eating in the shade, Mena stretches and stands up. Break time is over. The day's duties aren't. The sun is still brutal, shining down from a white-hot sky. But if they don't keep working, the tasks won't finish. You shakily get to your feet, feeling the soreness in your muscles stiffen after the short rest. For a moment, your head spins. You stand too quickly in the heat and feel dizzy. You might be on the verge of heat exhaustion. Layla's son notices your wobble and quickly brings you another sip of liquid, urging you to drink slowly. It's a mix of water and a touch of sour wine, vinegar-like, a rehydration trick. It tastes terrible, but you sip it. After a minute, the lightheadedness passes. That was a close call. It strikes you how easily a person could collapse from heat stroke here. If you weren't forcing yourself to adapt, you might have fainted, and then you could end up like that laborer you saw whipped earlier. Or worse, if your body truly overheated, you could even die. There are historical accounts of people dropping dead under the sun in these conditions. Mena asks if you're okay. You manage a nod and a weak smile. Though he's a tough taskmaster on himself, he doesn't seem cruel. He's genuinely checking if you can continue. You muster your strength. You've made it this far, and part of you doesn't want to disappoint these people who have welcomed you kindly. Before leaving the shade, you notice Layla's son repacking the basket. There's one piece of bread left and a few wilted greens, wild lettuce or herbs. The boy wraps them up. Perhaps they will save it for the household's evening meal, or maybe as an offering at the temple. Wasting food is not an option when you live so close to subsistence. Every crumb is accounted for. Now it's time to deliver the temple dues. The sun-blanched fields shimmer as you walk back toward the village with Mena and Hori. Passes stays behind with one ox to continue some lighter work. He's likely excused from the temple trip due to his stomach pains. You envy him slightly for staying under the palms, but off you go. Menna has loaded 2 large baskets of grain onto a donkey. The grain, probably emmer wheat from last season, or barley, is the temple's share of the harvest for use in feeding priests, brewing beer for offerings, and supporting the whole complex. In ancient Egypt, most farmers didn't own the land. It belonged to the pharaoh, the state, or the gods, temple estates. They paid a hefty portion, perhaps a third or more of their yield, as tax or rent. Menna's journey is one every farmer makes periodically, and woe betide anyone who fails to deliver the expected amount. You trail alongside, steadying one wobbly basket on the donkey's flank. The walk to the temple is not far. It's just on the outskirts of the village. A modest local temple. We're not talking Karnak or Luxor here, more like a small temple for a regional deity, or a chapel dedicated to a god of the area. Still, as you approach, you see the difference from the simple mud houses. The temple has walls of neatly fitted mud brick, or even stone at the foundation, and a pair of small obelisks or flagpoles at the entrance. The bigger temples have giant obelisks, but ours is humble. There are carvings at the gateway, images of the pharaoh and the gods, painted in blues, reds, and gold. The colors are vibrant, unlike the faded white of the village homes. 2 priests in white linen robes stand by the doorway, chatting. They see Menna and Hori coming with the donkey and nod in recognition. These priests are minor officials, possibly with shaved heads and a neat appearance, a stark contrast to your dusty, sweat-soaked self. One priest holds a tablet, a wooden board coated with gesso, and a reed pen. He's the scribe here to record deliveries. Suddenly, you feel very self-conscious. Here you are, a stranger, out of place and filthy from work, about to enter a sacred precinct, or at least approach it. You remember that foreigners or outsiders were often looked upon with suspicion. Menna had earlier told you to speak as little as possible and let him do the talking. You've kept quiet for the most part, but now, if the priest addresses you, what then? As the donkey is led into the courtyard, you bow your head slightly, trying to appear respectful and inconspicuous. The courtyard of the temple is cooler, shaded by the high walls. You smell something new, incense, a sweet, thick fragrance of burning frankincense and myrrh. It's used to purify the air and please the gods. It partially masks the odor of sweat and donkey that you bring in. Menna greets the priests with polite deference, referring to them as servants of the god, with a slight bow. Hori and you unload the baskets and set them where directed. The scribe priest begins counting and inspecting the grain. A moment of tension. Sometimes they accuse farmers of shortchanging or delivering subpar goods. You see Menna watching carefully, a hint of nervousness in his posture. This grain is lifeblood. If the temple officials aren't satisfied, fines or punishments could follow. The priest finishes his tally and seems content. He marks something on his board in hieratic script and nods to Menna. Menna breathes a visible sigh of relief and smiles. To your surprise, the priest then dips into a jar and hands Menna a small token, perhaps a receipt of payment or a token that can be exchanged later for a favor or a ration of oil or something. That part you're not fully aware of, but Menna thanks him. Now that the business part is done, you find yourself with a moment to actually look around this temple courtyard. There are statues along the sides, one of a seated goddess, likely Isis or Hathor, and one of a falcon-headed god, Horus perhaps. Offerings of flowers and food are laid at their feet, though in the heat, The flowers are wilted and the food looks dried out, probably offered that morning. Still, flies buzz around a bowl of dates and bread left for the gods, just as they buzzed around your breakfast. It strikes you. Even the offerings are humble here, not heaps of gold or anything, just everyday food and blooms. A doorway leads further in, into what must be the inner sanctuary, but a rope or bar is across it. Only priests can enter there to tend the idol of the god. You catch a glimpse beyond, darkness lit by oil lamps, and a larger-than-life figure of a deity in there. You feel a mix of curiosity and reverence. As a modern person, you know these statues are just that, statues. But standing here in this sacred space, with the heavy incense and chanting you now notice in the distance, perhaps a couple of priests are reciting midday hymns, you can't help but feel a bit of awe. This society's entire worldview centers on these gods. Every aspect of life, the flooding of the Nile, the success of crops, health, birth, death, is tied to divine favor and cosmic order, Ma'at. While Mena is chatting amiably now with the priest about the weather or the health of the priest's family, it sounds like, you recall the earlier scene of punishment by the river. That could just as easily happen here if someone offended the temple. The god's servants demand respect. For instance, imagine if you accidentally knocked over one of those offering bowls or spoke rudely here. That could be seen as sacrilege. Punishments for serious religious offenses can be brutal, anything from flogging to, in rare cases, execution or mutilation. Legends say tomb robbers sometimes had their noses and ears cut off. Of course, those are extreme cases, but even a minor slip might get you into trouble. You stand very still, hands at your sides, trying to exude humble respect. The priest's eyes flick to you finally, probably wondering who you are. He asks Mena something in a low voice. You feel your stomach knot, worried this could be trouble. Mena calmly explains that you are a distant relative from another village who has come to help with the harvest. You sense Mena chooses his words carefully, likely to avoid any hint that you're a foreigner or runaway or anything suspicious. The priest seems to accept this, giving a slight shrug, maybe thinking, another mouth to feed, eh? But he doesn't press the issue. You let out an internal sigh of relief. As you all turn to depart, a bell clangs softly deeper in the temple, signaling some internal ritual. The priests straighten up, distracted by their duties. On an impulse, you take one last look at the courtyard and catch sight of a small side altar where a woman, probably a local villager, is kneeling, whispering a prayer while placing a tiny figurine of Taweret, the hippo-headed goddess of childbirth. Perhaps she's praying for a safe delivery for herself or someone in her family. That reminds you of another aspect of survival here. If you're a woman and become pregnant in ancient Egypt, it's a huge risk. Many women don't survive childbirth or its complications, and even those who do often lose babies to illnesses. It's a painful thought. Layla herself has 2 children, but you wonder how many she might have lost before or in between. She's perhaps mid-20s, yet could have already experienced more grief than many modern people do in a lifetime. And still, life goes on for them. They find joy in the children who live, and solace in the belief that those who died are with the gods. Leaving the temple, you walk back into the blasting sunlight of afternoon. The brief interlude in a shaded, holier place almost made you forget the harsh reality outside. But it hits you immediately, the heat radiating from the ground in visible waves. The donkey lets out a snort, maybe as unhappy as you are to be back in it. There's still some work to finish in the fields before day's end, but at least the heaviest chores were done in the morning. Chapter 6. The Unforgiving Afternoon. The latter half of the day finds you once again in the fields, though thankfully doing slightly less strenuous tasks. The worst of the plowing and hauling was done earlier. Now it's more about tying up bundles of harvested reeds and gathering tools. Still, every movement feels twice as hard as it did in the morning. Your muscles are stiff, and you're nursing a growing blister on your palm from the hoe. The sun's angle is finally lowering, but the air remains scorching and still. Occasionally, a faint breeze off the Nile gives a moment's relief, and also carries with it a few aggressive black flies that seem determined to bite any exposed skin. You constantly wave your hand in front of your face to shoo them, but they're persistent. These flies bite hard, drawing a bit of blood, and you gain a new appreciation for why Egyptians depicted fly-shaped amulets and had fly whisk staffs. These pests were a real torment. If you think mosquitoes are bad at dawn and dusk, the daytime flies hold their own special piece of hell. Mena notices your flagging energy and gives you a simpler chore now. Walking the goats and a cow back towards the village, as it's nearing time to get them sheltered for the night. You're grateful for this, as it doesn't require bending or digging, just slow walking and herding. He and Hori remain to finish some last bits of field work, so you become a temporary herder, prodding a small bunch of goats ahead. The goats, of course, have minds of their own. One stubborn nanny goat keeps veering off to nibble on a clump of papyrus near the water. You tug at her rope and she bleats in protest. Another younger goat trots too fast, and you have to chase a bit to keep it from darting into a neighbor's plot. It's minor chaos. By the time you get them all pointed to the village, you're already sweating anew and cursing under your breath. Goat herder wasn't on your modern resume, and you can see why the phrase, like herding goats, could be synonymous with frustration, akin to herding cats. On the way, you pass near the river's edge. The Nile at this hour is beautiful, glittering and broad, but you remain cautious. You recall the tales of crocodiles. In fact, as you skirt a reedy bank, you hear a faint splash. Your heart leaps. You scan the waterline anxiously. There. Is that... Yes, those two bumps just above the water's surface, not far from shore, could be the eyes and nostrils of a crocodile. The creature is mostly submerged, likely resting in the shallows, but it's huge. You see it slowly slide forward and disappear with barely a ripple. You decide right then and there to keep a good distance between yourself and the river. It's a stark reminder. The Nile gives life, water for crops, fish for food, but also can deliver death in the form of hungry reptiles. Locals know which areas are safer to fetch water from, and they often move in groups making noise to avoid surprising a croc. Alone or unwary, you'd make a fine snack for Sobek's children, Sobek being the crocodile god. Hippos, too, you recall, are known in this river, though maybe more upstream. They are even more dangerous than crocs in many cases, territorial and aggressive. In legend, one pharaoh, perhaps King Tut, as some theories go, might have died from a hippo attack while hunting. The idea of that enormous beast tipping boats and crushing people is terrifying. Thankfully, you don't spot any hippos now, but you realize that just taking a boat ride on the Nile for leisure, if you thought of it, could be suicidal if a hippo decides it doesn't like you near its patch. When you finally return to the village with the goats and cow, the sun is slanting westward, casting long shadows of palm trees over the huts. It's late afternoon, nearing sunset. The once golden-brown monotone of the village is now painted with soft orange light, and the mud brick walls release the heat they stored all day. It's like walking into an oven. The narrow alleys between homes are stifling until the sun fully goes down. You secure the animals in a small pen made of wooden stakes behind Mena's house. Inside, Layla is already back from the fields. She was likely in the vegetable patches and orchard earlier, and is busily at work preparing the evening meal. She's grinding grain again with that heavy hand quern to make flour for tomorrow's bread. Watching her push the stone over the grain, you're struck by how labor-intensive it is. Tiny puffs of flour dust rise with each push. She's basically breathing that dust. You think of those lung particles in mummies. Yes, a lifetime of this could give her lung issues. Her knees are on a mat, but it must still hurt. This job is daily and never-ending. To have bread, someone must grind, knead, and bake every day. There are no supermarkets or even communal bakeries in a small village like this. Though cities had large bakeries, it's all manual and home-based. She pauses to wipe her brow and gives you a tired but warm smile as you come in. Despite clearly being exhausted herself, she asks how you're holding up. You manage to say you are okay, maybe using a couple of words you picked up, or just by your expression and a thumbs up, though who knows if thumbs up means anything here. Layla chuckles at your gestures anyway. She brings a clay jug and offers you some water to wash your hands and face. The water is in limited supply, but she insists. Gratefully, you rinse off the layer of dust and grime, watching the brownish water run off your arms. Mena and Hori arrive not long after, their silhouettes emerging from the glow of the fields behind them. They look as done in as you feel. As they enter the courtyard, Layla hands each of them a damp cloth to wipe themselves, a simple comfort. The children clamor around their father, excited to have him back, and also probably hoping for a treat. And indeed, Mena has something. From a pouch he took to the temple, he pulls out a small handful of dates and gives one to each child, ruffling their hair. Perhaps he got these at the temple, or from another farmer along the way, as a friendly trade. It's heartwarming, and a little bittersweet to watch. Even in this hard life, parents love their kids and try to bring them little joys, just like anywhere, anytime. Seeing this family moment, you can't help but think of your own family or loved ones back home, safe in the modern world. It pangs you to realize how far removed you are right now. If this were truly happening, you'd wonder if you'd ever see them again, or if you're stuck in this past. It's a lonely thought. But the children's laughter brings you back to the present. They run off to play, chewing the sweet dates, while Layla and Mena begin final dinner preparations. Chapter 7. An Evening in the Village. The sun sinks below the horizon, and a soft twilight envelops the village. Finally, the punishing heat begins to ebb. In fact, as soon as the sun is down, there's a hint of coolness, even though the ground still radiates warmth like a hot plate. You find yourself actually shivering for a moment as sweat evaporates, a sensation you never expected in Egypt, being momentarily cool. Layla lights a small oil lamp inside the main room of the house. It's a simple ceramic dish with a bit of linen wick soaking up olive oil. The flame flickers to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls. It provides just enough light to see by in one corner of the single-room interior. Much of the cooking and living happens in the courtyard, but the lamp is brought out for the coming darkness. You know that oil isn't cheap, so they will probably use the lamp sparingly, and only for a short while until everyone is ready to sleep. Dinner is served in the open-air courtyard where the evening breeze can be felt. You all sit on reed mats. Layla has prepared a stew of lentils and vegetables in a clay pot over the fire. The aroma is earthy and garlicky. She ladles portions into clay bowls. The stew is thick, with yellow-brown lentils, chunks of onion, and maybe some greens, like chopped leek or lettuce that was cooked down. For seasoning, probably just salt and more garlic or coriander, no pepper. Pepper is an Indian luxury unknown here. And no chili, not discovered yet in the world. It's hearty, though. You scoop it with pieces of flatbread, sopping up the flavorful mush. After the day's exertion, it tastes heavenly despite its simplicity, or maybe precisely because it's warm, nourishing mush for your utterly tired body. As you eat, you reflect that this is the largest meal of the day. Egyptians tend to have a bigger meal when work is done. It's still not huge by modern standards. No multiple courses, no dessert trays. But tonight, you do have a little treat. Remember those leftover bread and greens? Layla has mixed the chopped wilted greens, maybe radish tops or chard, with some garlic and salt to create a kind of savory side. And Mena brings out a small jar of date wine. Where did that come from? Possibly part of his temple token trade, or something he's been fermenting at home. It's not common for peasants to have wine. Beer is their staple. But a small amount for a special night is possible. He pours each adult a tiny cup. You sip it. It's sour and strong, more like vinegary fruit cider than fine wine, but it warms your belly and lightens the mood. The conversation at dinner is gentle and familial. The kids are chattering about something they played, maybe making a toy boat to float on an irrigation puddle. Hori, the worker, is actually Mena's brother-in-law, you learn. He talks about how one of his daughters, who lives in another village, is preparing for a local festival of Hathor next month. Layla asks if they will come visit during the festival. Hori says he hopes so. They discuss needing to brew extra beer for the celebration, and maybe slaughter a duck if they can afford it. It seems even amid hardship, they look forward to festivals and family gatherings. They ask you a question or two, probably about what the harvest is like where you come from, sticking to the story you're from another village. You mumble through answers as best as you can, using simple words. It reminds you of traveling in a foreign country where you only know a few phrases. You feel a bit foolish, but they don't laugh. They patiently try to understand. Human kindness exists in all eras, it seems, and these folks are fundamentally kind. Night has fully fallen now. Above, the sky is breathtaking, a sweep of stars as bright as diamonds on velvet. You lean back and gaze upward. The Milky Way is a glimmering band across the heavens. In your own time, you might rarely see it so clearly, but here, there's no light pollution at all. It strikes you that this is the same sky the ancient Egyptians looked at every night, inspiring their mythology. That hazy cluster might be seen as the Nile of the sky. Orion's belt shines. The Egyptians saw it as Osiris, perhaps. To the north, the star we call Polaris isn't particularly significant to them, but circumpolar stars in general were thought of as eternal, undying ones, often linked to the souls of pharaohs. One of the children points up and says, "Septet." You're not sure what that means until you follow her finger and see a very bright star twinkling just above the horizon in the west. Septet is Sirius, the star whose heliacal rising, appearing at dawn, heralds the annual Nile flood. They're excited about it, because maybe it's just become visible after sunset. Mena remarks something about the flood season being over, or the star's schedule. It reminds the family of the cyclical nature of their world. Star rises, river floods, fields grow, harvest comes, then repeat. That star meant everything to timekeeping and agriculture. There is contentment in this moment. Stomachs are reasonably full, the night is calm, and the family is together telling stories. You almost forget the trials of the day. It's easy to romanticize a simple life like this when you're sitting safely after supper under the stars. Perhaps you even feel a twinge of admiration. These people are tough, yes, but they also have warmth in their community and a spiritual connection to their world that many modern folks lack. They laugh easily now, and the children snuggle up to their parents as they grow sleepy. But before you drift into any notion that you might actually make it long-term here, reality gives you another little jab. Or rather, an itch. Several itches. The mosquito bites from last night are flaring up now, and new ones join them as the night insects come out in force. Without insect repellent, you're basically a buffet. You slap your arm and kill one, but two more take its place. The family seems to notice them too, but they're more resigned. It's just something you live with. Occasionally, you see them wave an arm or scratch, but complaining won't chase bugs away, so they don't bother to whine. Also, the air is starting to carry the high-pitched whine of mosquitoes. If one of those carries a disease, you'd likely get it. Malaria has been present in Egypt for millennia. The marshy areas by the Nile are perfect breeding grounds. There's also an even scarier illness locally known as the yearly fever, possibly what we'd call malaria or something similar. Without quinine or modern medicine, it can be lethal. Your only hope would be your own immune system and maybe some herbal fever remedies. You really hope none of these buzzing pests are infective. It's a strange thing to be worrying about as you try to relax. Layla seems to notice your discomfort. She disappears inside and returns with a small clay dish of ointment, likely rendered animal fat, mixed with some herbs like chamomile or lavender. She applies a little to the kid's arms and then offers some to you. It smells pungent, but not entirely unpleasant, a bit rancid, a bit floral. It's meant to deter insects, or at least soothe bites. You rub it on your skin. It's greasy, but indeed the mosquito bites sting less, and the scent keeps a few of the bugs at bay. Thank goodness for ancient domestic wisdom. After dinner, the chores aren't quite done. You see Layla tidying up the cooking area, covering the pot to keep out rats. Mena steps out briefly and returns with a big jar of water. He likely went to the village well or a central storage to refill for the night. Water for drinking or cooking is precious. There is no tap to just turn on if someone gets thirsty late. The children are now drooping with sleep, rubbing their eyes. It's been a long day for them playing in the heat, and kids here wake with the sun too. Layla takes them inside to one corner where bedding, simple mats, is arranged. If you peek in, you'd see she tucks them with a thin linen or cloth. She might tell them a short lullaby or prayer. Perhaps something like, "May bees guard your sleep," as Bes is the guardian dwarf god of households, often invoked to protect against nightmares and evil spirits at night, especially for children and mothers. You, Mena, and Hori remain outside for a bit longer, enjoying the relative cool. Now that the kids are asleep, or nearly so, the conversation can turn to more adult matters or quiet reflection. Hori mentions he must depart to his own home, maybe next door, and bids good night. Mena and you are left sitting under the starlight, sharing a companionable silence. There's a camaraderie that forms when two people have worked hard together all day. No words needed. You both understand the feeling of bone-deep fatigue and relief that the day is done. Mena does speak up softly after a while, saying something that includes a thanks, perhaps thanking his gods or expressing gratitude for a good day's work and the fact that you helped out. You get the sense that he's inviting you to sleep as well. Chapter 8. No rest for the weary. It's time to settle in for the night, but as you've anticipated, actually sleeping might be a whole other challenge. Mena shows you to a spot where you can sleep. In the warm months, they prefer sleeping on the roof or in the courtyard under the stars because it's cooler than the enclosed house. So you will sleep outside tonight, likely on the roof, which you access by a wooden ladder leaning against the wall. Climbing the ladder, carrying the reed mat and that wooden headrest pillow, you reach the flat roof. It's a plain surface of hard-packed mud and straw plastered over beams. During the day, it's hot, but at night, it's not too bad. There's a low parapet wall for safety, so you don't roll off. Up here, you feel a slight breeze now and then, which is a blessing. Mena and Layla bring their mats up too. The children, being small, might remain in the room downstairs where it's safer for them in case of rolling. Or perhaps the whole family is on the roof. If the kids sleep between the parents, they won't fall. Let's say for authenticity that maybe the kids are inside and you and the adults are on the roof, or possibly kids as well. But they likely keep them inside if mosquitoes are too bad, or maybe they have netting. Actually, Egyptians did sometimes have bed nets or gauze curtains to keep bugs off. Maybe not everyone, but it's plausible. However, tonight you certainly don't have a mosquito net. You'll brave the elements directly. You lie down on the mat. It's quite firm, basically layers of woven reeds. Not exactly plush, but after today, you could probably fall asleep on a rock. The wooden headrest is something you still find awkward. It's like a little pedestal that supports your head high enough that insects crawling on the floor might not get into your ears or mouth, and it helps with airflow around your head in the heat. Clever design, but not comfortable for someone used to soft pillows. You try to position it under your neck. It's not too bad if you lie on your back. It props your head up at a slight angle. On your side, it's a non-starter, so you keep to your back. The stars are your ceiling. It would be peaceful, except for the sounds. The village at night is not silent. Dogs bark occasionally, perhaps warding off some unseen intruder or just conversing with each other. There's braying from that stubborn donkey a few houses down, and insects, a chorus of crickets chirping away, joined by the high buzz of mosquitoes near your ears now and then. The ointment isn't a force field, it just helps a bit. Additionally, there are mice or rats rustling about. You hear scuttling in the thatch of the roof or the stored grain bins nearby. In an agrarian setting, rodents are part of the environment. The Egyptians have cats largely to deal with this, but not every rodent is caught. Maybe you see the family cat slink along the edge of the roof, on the prowl. You hope it catches those little thieves before they come nibbling on you. The idea of a rat running over your feet in the dark gives you the shivers. Lying there, you finally have a moment to fully process the day. Your body is screaming. Every muscle aches. Your arms, used to typing or driving maybe, are now sore from swinging tools. Your legs are stiff from squatting and chasing goats. Your lower back feels like someone hit it with a stick. Oh wait, you stumbled with a plow. Close enough. Then there are the specific pains. The blister on your palm throbs. The sunburn on the back of your neck feels hot to the touch and sensitive. The mosquito bites itch incessantly on your ankles and arms. You resist the urge to scratch because you know it'll only make them worse. There's no soothing calamine lotion here. Maybe you could ask for a dab of that ointment on them, but you don't want to disturb the family now that they're settling to sleep. Speaking of which, you can hear Mena nearby, breathing deeply. That lucky man seems to fall asleep as soon as his head hit the wooden pillow. Layla, too, is resting quietly. How do they do it? Possibly because this routine is every day for them. They're conditioned to sleep despite the discomforts. Or they're just utterly exhausted like you are, but perhaps more accustomed to ignoring the little annoyances. they might also have their own protective measures. Maybe they burned a bit of incense or repellent herb up here earlier to ward off bugs. Some people used to burn frankincense or a local equivalent to drive mosquitoes away, the ancient mosquito coil. You, however, toss and turn as much as one can on a narrow mat. Your mind is racing a bit now that you're finally not busy. The weight of what you experienced sets in. It's a small miracle you got through the day without a major mishap. But could you do it again tomorrow? The thought of repeating this from sunrise onward is daunting. And many ancient Egyptians did it every day, except perhaps one rest day in 10, or festival days, if any. They didn't have modern weekends or vacations. Life was work, season after season, year after year. In the dim starlight, you look at your hands. In just one day, they're grimy and have a couple of new calluses forming. Imagine your hands after a month. They'd probably harden, maybe crack, nails broken. Your skin, which might have been smooth, is now covered in fine dust ingrained in every crease, a few scratches from thorns, and a splotchy sunburn. You feel a new empathy for all the laborers of history. It's one thing to read about them, another to live a day in their world. Suddenly, you hear something that makes your heart skip. A faint hissing sound, like air escaping or maybe an insect. You raise your head slightly, ears pricked. Then a quick scuttle. You think of snakes. Yes, cobras and vipers exist here. By day, they hide from the sun, but at night, they might be out hunting rats. A snake on the roof? Could be, if there are rodents around. Egyptians often built houses to minimize entry points, but snakes can climb or find cracks. You recall that they had spells and charms against snake bites. The goddess Sirius was invoked for scorpion and snake protection. None of that is comforting to you right now, as you have neither antidote nor divine incantation at hand. You slowly reach for a stick that is propped by the parapet, probably kept there to knock dates from the palm or something. Just in case that sound comes closer, you want something to shoo or defend with. Your senses are on high alert. Every rustle of straw, every chirp, sets you on edge. It's ironic. You survived the active part of the day, but here you are in the quiet of night, more terrified of a potential snake than you were of any challenge at noon. Minutes pass, maybe an hour. No more hissing, no sudden bite. Perhaps it was just a lizard. There are plenty of harmless geckos that make little clicking sounds at night hunting bugs. Maybe it was that. Eventually, you cautiously lower your guard. The adrenaline subsides, but your sleepiness is replaced by an uncomfortable awareness. You feel homesick intensely now. Homesick for a world where you can close a door and feel relatively secure, where a soft bed and a pillow cradle your aching body, where you don't have to worry that a venomous creature might wander over your blanket, where you could take an ibuprofen for pain, a Benadryl for itching, or just turn on a fan to keep the bugs off and lull you to sleep. You think of your bathroom back home, bright, clean, with a flushing toilet and running water to wash your hands. Here, if you need the toilet in the middle of the night, you'll have to climb down and find the jar, or go out to the field's edge in darkness, with who knows what lurking around. Probably best to hold it until morning, you decide. Little by little, fatigue wins. Your body, despite all the discomfort, starts to drift towards sleep. Your last thoughts as you fade out are a jumble. Gratitude that you made it. Worry about what tomorrow would bring if you had to stay. And profound appreciation for the modern world awaiting you, hopefully, after this hypothetical journey ends. You also feel respect for Mena, Layla, Hori, and everyone in this village who lives this life not as a novelty for one day, but every day, with resilience and even joy in the small things. They know nothing of air conditioning or antibiotics, so they don't mourn those luxuries. They make do and find happiness where they can. A cool breeze at dusk, a sweet date, a child's laughter, a successful harvest, a loving family moment under the stars. Chapter 9. The Dawn of Gratitude. Conclusion. A rooster's crow pierces the veil of your slumber. Pink light is creeping into the eastern sky. Somehow, you manage to sleep in snatches through the night's discomfort. As you groggily sit up on the rooftop, a mix of relief and soreness washes over you. Relief because you made it to another dawn. Soreness because, well, every part of you protests movement. The village is waking just as before, but today you won't be continuing the cycle here. In our mind's journey, we've reached the end of your single day in ancient Egypt, and what a day it has been. You swing your legs over the edge of the roof and climb down the ladder slowly, each rung reminding you of a different muscle ache. In the courtyard, Mena is already up, tending to the fire for breakfast bread. He looks at you with a friendly expression and perhaps a touch of amusement. You must appear a wreck. Layla offers you a morning drink of beer or water. You realize with a kind of quiet amazement, you survived the day. But you also realize that doing this for more than a day would break you. One day was enough to teach volumes about how harsh life can be without modern support. The thought of a week, a month, or years is overwhelming. You'd either adapt over a long period, growing stronger, tougher, more tolerant to pain and danger, or more likely, you'd succumb to something. Maybe heat stroke on an even hotter tomorrow, or a simple infected cut, or one of those illnesses looming in the environment. Maybe you'd accidentally anger the wrong person, or falter in front of an overseer having a bad day and receive a crippling punishment. There are just so many points of failure. The phrase "wouldn't last one day" is an exaggeration in a literal sense. You did last one day. But it stands true in a broader sense. You wouldn't last because you wouldn't want to last. By the time that rooster crows, a modern person like you would be desperate to return home to the 21st century. Your own bed, your own easier life. It's not just about physically surviving. It's about what you can bear. And the truth is, the daily grind of ancient Egypt would break the spirit of most of us coddled by modern conveniences. We're not used to pain being normal, or effort without end, or having death and danger as constant companions. As you gather whatever scant belongings you have, you take one last look at the rising sun gilding the palm trees and mud brick walls. The villagers are already out and about, some heading to the fields again, others lighting fires, children carrying water jugs almost as big as they are. Life in ancient Egypt is relentless, yet they carry on with a matter-of-fact acceptance. You feel a surge of respect, and also a surge of gratitude. Respect for them, and gratitude that you don't actually have to stay here forever. In your heart, you say a silent thank you, perhaps even to the gods of Egypt, just in case, that this was only a journey in imagination, if it was. You have learned so much. The value of clean water, the luxury of variety in food, the miracle of medicine, the comfort of technology that shields us from the elements. Even something as simple as a cotton t-shirt and comfy shoes. Oh, what you would give for those instead of a scratchy linen kilt and flimsy sandals. As you step away, leaving Mena and his family to their day 2, while you bow out after day 1, you feel a mix of sorrow and relief. sorrow to part from these kind people who helped you survive and showed you a glimpse of their world. Relief to return to a world where survival isn't a daily question mark hovering over your head. Now, back in the safety of the present, and perhaps snuggled in your bed or couch as you listen, you can finally relax those tensed muscles. You made it through our journey. Close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath. Feel the softness of your pillow, the coolness of your fan or AC, the fact that you're likely not covered in dust and bites, and if you are, at least you can go shower. Think about how different our lives are thanks to thousands of years of progress, yet also reflect on how much we have in common with those long ago people. The love of family, the need for community, the appreciation of nature's beauty, and the resilience in the face of hardship. They were human, just as we are, only living in a harsher setting by our standards. Why you wouldn't last one day in ancient Egypt, it's a provocative idea, but it also highlights something important. We stand on the shoulders of countless generations who endured and built the world step by step to become easier, safer, and more comfortable. It makes you grateful, doesn't it? As the first light of your morning or the last light of your night fades, depending on when you're listening, you can carry that gratitude with you. The next time you sip clean water, or lie down on a comfy mattress, or even do a workout in an air-conditioned gym, remember that you have it so much easier than our ancient ancestors. And if they could see how we live, they might think we all live like pharaohs in paradise. Now it's time to return fully to your own world. If you're listening to this at night, let the comfort of your present surroundings lull you into a deep sleep, safe in the knowledge that you won't be awakened at dawn to haul water or bake bread over a smoky fire. If you're somehow listening in the morning or daytime, carry the lessons of ancient Egypt with you. Maybe you'll complain a little less about trivial things, having seen perspective on true hardship. Thank you for joining me on this epic journey through time. I hope you found it as eye-opening as I did. Until our next adventure, take care of yourself, cherish the luxuries both big and small that surround you, and as always, sleep well and stay curious. Good night.